Uganda, Tuesday, March 26, 1974. This morning, Tuesday, March 26, 1974, Amin Dada once again awakens out of a nightmare. Killers were trying to assassinate him at home during the night, and these killers were his own soldiers. Like Gaddafi and Stalin, he sleeps very little. For these paranoid men, night brings out their worst fears. Especially for Amin Dada, who lives in an irrational world where the spirits of his dead enemies come to haunt him and are seeking revenge. In addition, there are fears that are all too real. 3 years ago, as an army general, he succeeded in overthrowing his predecessor by a coup d'etat. Now he himself is afraid of being overthrown. To maintain power and protect himself, he has unleashed a reign of terror throughout the country. Any dream of his deemed premonitory can result of hundreds of arrests and executions on the very same day.
He was scared that something can happen to his life because how he was ruling. People were scared of him, and also he was scared of the people.
Everyone is subjected to the repression, starting with his closest collaborators, who start to disappear one after the other.
Everybody in Uganda, members of the armed forces, police, and the public, they are responsible for my security. And immediately they hear anybody making subversive activities or try to plan anything against me, they report that person straight to the police.
And the methods employed by Amin's police are extremely brutal. Victims are clubbed to death, burned in the savannah, their bodies thrown to the crocodiles in the Nile, or shot publicly, wearing white aprons to highlight the blood. Choked with their own penises stuffed down their throats, and some even dynamited in groups. In 3 years, he has already had more than 150,000 Ugandans massacred. But unlike Stalin and Gaddafi, Amin personally participates in the repression. His home is situated only a few meters from the principal center of detention and torture. To enter without being seen, Amin has had a tunnel built. He tortures the victims himself, and then usually finishes them off with a sledgehammer. Amin is suspicious of everyone, and especially of his entourage. His daughter recalls how he spent nights in surveillance of his own soldiers.
He wasn't sleeping so much. Wow. He can sleep especially during daytime, but during the night, he can just be there on the balcony. He takes off the light, watching the soldiers, how they are patrolling. You know, a place like State House, as it's there are bushes, so many trees, things like that. He must fear. You must fear also your own soldiers. Because he thought that as his staff, they can do him bad. You see? And it was correct. They told him that the people who are going to overthrow you are those people whom you are working with. That's why when you are president, don't trust people near. Love them, but don't trust them.
Like Stalin and Gaddafi, Amin had seized power by force. All of the dictators were caught up in the same spiral of violence. They were suspicious of everybody and could trust nobody, especially those closest to them, who were best positioned to assassinate them. Because of this tremendous pressure, they would progressively plunge into madness and paranoia. He doesn't know it yet, but today Idi Amin has good reason to be afraid. His own cousin, General Arube, with whom he grew up and who he had appointed Brigadier General of the army, is planning to overthrow him. As he would later tell his son, Jafar Amin, he was about to live through the most difficult day of his reign.
The issue of the push attempt by his very own tribe, the Kakwa, we are Kakwas, was the most painful situation for my father. Charles Arube was more or less a brother. As a cousin, he was very much a brother.
In addition to all the atrocities he has committed, now Amin will have to go one step further, go against a member of his own family. Amin Dada also plundered his country. He collects luxury cars and spends limitless amounts of money. He is hardly ever in his office and spends a great deal of his time at his villas in the company of his mistresses.
They had so many wives. You see? Most of the homes she had, she must have a wife there.
It is estimated that Amin Dada had at least 40 children. But even Babi Salam Shida, the daughter of one of his 3 legitimate wives, can't remember exactly how many brothers and sisters she had.
We are staying with my 6, 4, the one who died, 4 again, 8. Let me say, Shombe, I think 22.
After 3 years of wielding absolute power, Amin can finally have everything he was deprived of in his childhood.
My father came from the lowest rank in the community. And he was simply saying, I'm an example of a sharecropper, somebody who used to slash sugar cane as a child, becoming a head of state. So it is possible. He lived the colonial era, and out of the blue, he came to power. But he had served and lived the colonial era.
Amin belonged to the Kakwa tribe, a tribe living in a remote desert region of Uganda. His father abandoned the family when Amin was still very young. His mother practiced witchcraft. She raised her son on her own in an irrational world dominated by spirits. To survive, she moved in with a soldier in the British colonial regiment. But the other soldiers on the base kept taunting her and finally drove her and her son away. The two lived in utter misery until Amin had no choice but to sign up with the very regiment that had humiliated him. At 18, he was only a kitchen boy, but he quickly climbed the ranks. A few years later, he became one of the only black officers in the colonial army who had noticed Amin's strength and potential for violence. In charge of putting down the revolts of the rebel tribes, he reverted to terror tactics and torture.
It was the methods he used to cut off the genitals of the culprits and humiliate them.
After independence and the departure of the British in 1962, Amin continues his ascent and becomes commander of the Ugandan army under President Milton Obote. But his ambition does not end there. After several assassination attempts, he finally succeeds in overthrowing Obote and seizes power on January 25, 1971.
Idi Amin wasn't well educated, but he had a lot of intelligence, natural intelligence, and he managed to maneuver his ways to the complete amazement of those who were with him.
Now it is Amin who has the power.
You've said you wanted to teach Britain a lesson, President. Why is that? Does this mean the end of the friendship with Britain you had?
And that is now a lesson I'm teaching the British.
With a certain irony, he finds provocative ways to humiliate his previous masters. He obliges British businessmen to kneel and declare allegiance to him. He has his throne carried by 4 white men. He even goes as far as bestowing official British Army medals upon himself.
In order to make it absolutely clear to you, I have been honored by the highest order of the conqueror of the British imperialism in Uganda.
Without a qualm, Amin invents the most fantastic titles for himself. He proclaims himself president for life, king of Scotland, and his megalomania reaching delirious proportions, lord of all the animals in the world and of all the fish in the sea. At 1.95 meters, 125 kilos, Amin Dada is a veritable force of nature, a colossus who overwhelms everyone. His outstanding physique and his sense of showmanship make him very popular. Right from the start, cameras from around the world are focused on this eccentric and unpredictable individual who thinks nothing of being interviewed in his swimming pool wearing pajamas.
I do both politics and sports, and even tactics I use in sport by knocking out people I use in politics also.
In his youth, Amin was boxing champion of Uganda 8 times straight. Amin is the strongest man in the country. He is Big Daddy, reassuring and frightening at the same time. And if his eccentricities amused his people and the media, they also served as a smokescreen for his crimes. It is 12:30 p.m. Amin has just learned something that has made him furious. His 3 wives have been partying all night with their bodyguards. Neglected by their husband, they wanted to provoke him, but could not have imagined the risk they were taking. Amin will not tolerate this insult and decides to take revenge. He rushes to the radio station to reveal the indecent behavior of his wives to the whole country. He shouts, "My wives are unfaithful. They have betrayed me. They have destroyed my political work. I repudiate them. I divorce them this very day. They must leave the house." On hearing these declarations, the 3 wives hurriedly pack their suitcases and flee from the house to escape Amin's anger. When they come home from school, the children don't understand what's happening.
I remember we are preparing to come back home. So when we came from school, we found that my mother and our stepmothers, they weren't at home. Then they told us with the maids, "Hey, where is mommy?" They said, "No, they've packed up their things, they've gone." So we were shocked. You see, and even you couldn't even ask our father, because also he was just looking at us. We were fearing to ask. Yeah, we were at school.
A few months later, Malyamu, Babi's mother, was badly hurt in an accident. She managed to escape from Uganda and take refuge in London. Her daughter would not see her again for more than 30 years. Nora was spared for political reasons. She belongs to a tribe that Amin is persecuting. He spares her to absolve himself of all responsibility. Kay would not be as lucky. A year later, she was found cut to pieces in the trunk of a car. The children found out about this horror on television.
We were playing out. So they called us to go and take a shower. Then our sisters came running and said, "Oh, you come and watch on the television. Mama, no, Mama K also is dead." So the sister, my sister Kide, is the firstborn of Mama K. She started crying. Then she was cut in pieces. It was very hard. It was very hard for us. It was something strange.
It is the Minister of Health himself who was ordered by Amin to have the victim's body sewn back together.
He directed that the body be sewn, the parts be sewn back the way they should have been, which we did at the hospital. The children had to go to see the body of their mother. It's a very traumatic experience for them at that age.
Amin takes advantage of the event for a macabre display. He has Kay's stitched-up body exposed in front of the hospital for all the crowd to see, and even forces her own children to look at it. In front of everyone, he shouts, "Your mother, you see, was a loose woman. Look at what happened. This is how those who blaspheme against Allah are punished." Babi Salamshida still remembers the moment when she saw her stepbrothers and sisters come home from the hospital.
They were just crying, unhappy. They were no longer playing with us. And sometimes they say that we miss our mother. For you, you have your mother. For us, we don't have, we no longer have any mother.
After having divorced his 3 wives this morning, Amin must now confront his cousin, General Charles Arube. He wants to see him in person, to read in his eyes the signs of betrayal which he has been warned about. Arube represents everything he detests. He is an elegant and cultivated man, an intellectual who has been educated in England. He poses a real threat to Amin because Arube has the support of a large part of the regular army. The situation is even more delicate because he is dealing with a member of his own family. Amin begins by accusing him outright. He says that he knows about his cousin's plot and that he won't get away with it. But Arube remains unperturbed. He doesn't try to defend himself. Instead, he criticizes Amin's reign of terror that has swept the country. Amin explodes with anger. No one has ever dared to defy him like this. He is the chief now, and if Arube says one more thing against him, he can have Arube executed on the spot. But Arube remains impassive. Amin realizes that his cousin is determined and that he has perhaps underestimated his underlying strength. He has no choice. He must eliminate him. So his attitude changes. He pretends to want a reconciliation. He says to him, "You are my brother, a Kakwa like me. Let us make peace. Leave here in peace, and may God protect you." The 2 men pretend to be reconciled, but they know that an armed confrontation is inevitable, and that in the outcome, one of them will die. As soon as Arube is out of the room, Amin summons the head of his mercenaries and orders him to assemble his men to pursue Arube and assassinate him.
If Amin himself gave the order for you to be eliminated, they can come anywhere with everybody watching. They wouldn't care.
Amin waits for his mercenaries to confirm that his cousin, Charles Arube, has been assassinated. The stakes are enormous. It's the most dangerous putsch attempt that he has ever had to face. But he is confident. He has a private army of 18,000 men that he pays by pilfering the state budget. These are actual death squads that terrify the entire country.
The time of Amin was a time of terror. We were in fear at that time, great fear of the soldiers. See,
Mohamed Kisambira was Amin's banker before being imprisoned like many of the tyrant's collaborators.
The method of killing people was by hitting them on the head with a hammer. See? So the civilian population was terrified because of the acts of the soldiers of Amin. People were instilled with fear.
But this time, Amin's mercenaries have failed. He has just learned that they have been ambushed and killed by his cousin Arube's men.
Charles Arube and 3 other fellow Kakwas instigated a coup d'etat. They took up positions in the key areas of the radio, television, and important government houses and thought they had captured power.
Charles Arube seems on the verge of winning the battle. Amin assembles his troops to launch a counterattack.
I can remember that day our father came in, putting on his revolvers, each and everything. Then for him, he was in the office with other soldiers. So many soldiers came at home in State House. They were going in the meeting like something, but we couldn't know what was going on wrong.
Amin gives his mercenaries the order to surround the building where Arube and his men have regrouped and to await his orders before killing them. It is midnight. Amin returns to his room. Everything has worked out according to plan. Arube thought his coup d'etat was a success, but he made the mistake of ceasing combat and going to celebrate the victory with his men in one of the barracks. Meanwhile, Amin Dada's mercenaries spread out quietly all around the area without Arube's troops realizing it. One by one, all the soldiers posted outside the building are neutralized. Once in position, Amin's men inform him that they are ready to launch the assault. Amin tells them to wait and manages to reach Arube on the phone inside the barracks.
He called Charles Arube. And Charles Arube, when he grabbed the phone, he felt that the gentleman was intoxicated and he seemed to be celebrating. They're talking on phone, and with tears on his eyes while he's talking to me, Dad explained at that angle. He said, "My mother gave you to me and told me to look after you. After all this, you want to take power away from me. You come and betray me." And he's crying. I'm talking about my dad. Tears. So he was remembering a very painful thing. Charles Arube answered, "It is good for a Christian who is educated to rule." He said, "Charles Arube, look outside the window." Charles had put his people out. When he looked in the positions, he did not see any of his people, and he saw different vehicles. He said, "You are surrounded." When the phone went off, he called the radio call of the people outside, and they answered him. They just had a bullet inside. He had killed himself. That is a painful truth which, amongst us Kakwas, we had to go through a cultural cleansing because brothers had fought and blood had spilled.
Whether he committed suicide or, more likely, was killed by Amin's men, Charles Arube is dead. Today, Amin has escaped the most threatening putsch he has ever had to face. But there remains one last thing for him to do before definitely finishing with Charles Arube. His body had been taken to the Kampala morgue. Amin must now honor a Kakwa's warrior ritual.
If you taste the blood of some of your victims, then you'll be protected. In order to appease the spirit of those you've killed or those who you've brutalized, if you taste their blood, you can cushion your punishment. Amin himself believed in these things.
Nobody was present at the scene, but it is very probable that Amin, as per his beliefs, stuck a knife in Arube's side to drink a little of his blood and thereby capture his spirit so that it could not avenge itself. In 1979, when the Tanzanian army invaded Uganda, Idi Amin Dada fled to Saudi Arabia and lived in exile there until death. In his last interview, he said, "I have no remorse, only nostalgia." He died in 2003 at age 75 without ever being prosecuted. His reign lasted 8 years, resulting in the death of 300,000 people. Today, Uganda's government is no longer a dictatorship, but the prisons and torture chambers where hundreds of thousands were massacred are still there, abandoned in the forest. On March 1st, 1953, Stalin, shut away in his office, did not appear for the entire day. His entourage didn't dare disturb him. When at last the Kremlin courier entered the office, he found Stalin unconscious, lying on the floor, the victim of a major stroke. His agony lasted 5 days. He was 75 years old. Stalin died the same way that he governed, alone in his office. The man who was responsible for the death of over 20 million people died at the summit of his power, mourned by millions of Soviets and even by some of his victims. He had created a system that would outlast him for over 35 years.